Today on CityCast DC, I am here with CityCast's Priyanka Tilve and Washington City Paper's Alex Koma, and we are talking crime laws at the DC Council, potential new routes on the metro, and what may well be the best bathrooms in the region. Today is Friday, July 14th. I'm Michael Schaefer, and here's what DC is talking about. So, Alex, you cover the DC Council, among other parts of city politics, for City Paper. And as of this week, the council is going out on summer recess. I understand you are also going out on summer vacation. And they had a big debate, and ultimately not a close vote, on some crime legislation. Everyone is scrambling about this because crime is way up in the city. What happened this week?
Yeah, so the context is that for the last few months, Mayor Muriel Bowser has been making a really concerted effort to get the council to pass legislation that she's proposed around crime. She came out in May with a series of proposals that addressed what she viewed as gaps within the criminal legal system. Specifically, she said that she wanted to see judges get more ability to hold people pre-trial, both adults and juveniles, because she said that one of the bigger problems she was seeing in DC's system is that people were getting released when they were still awaiting trial and then going out and committing other crimes. She also wanted to enhance penalties for certain gun crimes to essentially prevent future crime. So the council took a look at this and they held a very long hearing. I think it was 12 hours on all of this. Brooke Pinto, the Ward 2 council member and judiciary chair, gave her a fair hearing. Ultimately, Pinto decided we're not going to do all of these things because many of the provisions in the mayor's bill were pretty controversial and people didn't want to move ahead of them. So Pinto sort of stripped it down into a package of policies that, as you noted, Mike, got pretty broad agreement. The final bill passed 12-1, much more narrow in scope than what the mayor was looking to do, but still, in the spirit of showing that the council is doing something, is acting ahead of the summer when crime traditionally spikes in DC.
So the two kind of top line things in this bill they passed are, as you said, enabling more pretrial detentions for accused people and creating this new crime of firing a gun in public.
Yeah, that's right. The creation of the new crime, firing gun in public, was actually something, if you can remember when we were talking about the criminal code revision, this was happening a couple months ago. The effort to modernize DC's outdated criminal code. This is actually something that, prosecutors and police have been asking for a while, because right now there is no standalone offense that just says, if for instance, you fire a gun and miss, you can't be charged with a crime for that in the same way that you could if you actually hit somebody. And so prosecutors viewed this as a key way to be able to start bringing more cases against people. So that provision, among with many of the others in Pinto's bill, which were, around things like sharing more data, making GPS data from ankle monitors admissible in court, those things didn't attract a good deal of controversy. It was really that provision that you mentioned that gives judges more discretion to hold people pre-trial. It doesn't say they have to, but it does allow them to in a way that they are a bit more limited now. That was the bit that really attracted a lot of controversy because many of the civil rights groups and advocacy groups working on all this stuff were essentially saying, I think it's something like 1% of all people who have been held pretrial who go on to commit another crime in that interim period between when they're released and when they, head back to trial. I mean, you're essentially eroding presumption of innocence that all of us are supposed to get if we're accused of something. And so that was why you saw Ward 4 council member Janice Lewis-George, who was the one dissenting vote, and many others in the advocacy community pushing back pretty hard against these changes, even though they didn't go nearly as far as what the mayor wanted.
As I understand, the pretrial detention thing is, as you're saying, the sticking point that created the most debate, kind of made this debate discussion go so long on Tuesday. So in what way is Pinto's bill different from Bowser's, specifically on the pretrial detentions?
Yeah, so Pinto over the weekend in particular, I think, she saw the hearing that she held on Bowser's full bill, saw several of her colleagues speak up pretty forcefully against these provisions. And so I think she went around and was doing a little bit of horse trading with her colleagues to see how she could narrow that provision. Obviously, it still survived in its final form, but it was watered down pretty substantially from what the mayor originally proposed. The mayor originally wanted there to be the ability for judges to hold juvenile defendants, even in instances where they were essentially saying, this is for the good of the juvenile. Like, we're making this judgment not because we're worried they're going to reoffend, but rather because we see this as being in their best interest.
We're going to lock them up because it's in their best interest.
Yeah. And
Okay.
Well, no, we're going to lock them up because they are accused of committing a crime.
Well, it's both, essentially.
But it's in their best interest.
Exactly. They're accused of committing a crime, and we really feel we need to take this proactive step because if I were to make their argument, it would be to say, this is going to keep you safe from associating with the people that you were with before, that sort of thing.
Right.
That is not an argument that many council members took particularly seriously. And so that is the part that Ward 5 council member Zachary Parker was involved in, helping to pare down. Now, this bill really focuses on judges get this, ability to hold people pretrial more frequently in instances of particularly violent felonies. So that means, everything sort of from carjackings and shootings up to murders, basically.
So how does Bowser feel about it? How does Bowser feel about this latest iteration?
Yeah, well, you could imagine one world where she's upset that all of her policies didn't pass because the council really did strip many of them out of her original proposal. But I think that she perceived, probably correctly, that the smartest thing for her to do was to take a win where she could get it. She could see the writing on the wall that the council was going to pass this so long as, she exercised some restraint. And so in this past week, even last week, you saw her coming out in favor strongly of what Pinto proposed and then going on the, offensive to try and get the council to pass it. And so she has been all in on this bill, even though it doesn't do everything she wanted. She's called it, a big step. And most importantly, I think it was a very telling moment during one of her press conferences where she was promoting it, where she said, hey, when I introduced this bill back in May, the council chairman, Phil Mendelson, said council wasn't going to take up anything, before the council took its 2-month-long break. And look, now here they are. They've taken up a bill. It may not be everything I wanted, but look, they've seen the urgency. So it's useful for her to say, look, the council understands what I understand, which is residents are concerned about crime and they felt the need to do something.
So, Alex, there was another bill that passed that effectively re-allows the police to engage in high-speed chases. And you had, as you noted, this Pinto bill that passed 12-1, despite a lot of outcry from the advocacy community. I have heard people saying that they believe this is sort of a pendulum swing moment, indicating that the kind of push around defund-like issues has ebbed and is swinging back the other way, perhaps because crime is up. Do you think that's right?
I think there's something to it. I don't know. I mean, I think the fact that this bill is so pared back from what Bowser proposed cuts against some of that narrative to an extent. If we were seeing, a true return to some of the policies that we've seen in DC and in the 90s that are much more carceral, much more punitive, then I think you would have seen council members a lot more willing to embrace tougher sentences, longer sentences, in a way that they just weren't. But I think that you are absolutely onto something when you're saying that the council could have taken another way here. They easily could have said, the mayor is demagoguing on this issue. We have, made the necessary investments, and that fundamentally, as Phil Mendelson, argued, even though he ended up supporting the bill, saying that, solving crimes is not what the DC Council does. I mean, you easily could have seen them make that argument a lot more forcefully, and they did here and there. There was some grumbling, but by and large, the fact that this was a 12-1 vote even from council members like Zachary Parker, who I mentioned, who campaigned on the idea of a new approach to public safety just 1 year ago, are now, feeling the pressure, from their constituents, does indicate that there has been some shift here. Considering the tenor of this debate's been ugly, I don't know how long it'll last, but we'll see.
Capital Fringe was founded in 2005 with a mission to celebrate cultural democracy and access to art and artistic expression for all. Capital Fringe's annual festival is the only unjuried, self-producing live performance festival in the DC area. This year's productions open up an exploration into an array of human experiences, ranging from the tragic Knickerbocker theater collapse to lighthearted brunch humor, from grappling with things like dementia and skin cancer to the comedic relief of stand-up performances. There is a new two-person Romeo and Juliet and stories influenced by Indigenous, Black, queer, and femme perspectives to a musical deep dive into the legends of bluegrass music. The festival's 27 productions are performed and will take place in 2 unoccupied office properties in Georgetown and 16 productions in 2 additional stages in DuPont Circle. The whole thing is going down July 12th through the 23rd, so go to capitalfringe.org to find out more.
So, on another perennial subject, I should say, the Metro. We had an episode a ways ago about fantasy new Metro routes. Like, what would you design if you could? And one of the things we found is that when you actually talk to people who know what they're talking about, what you think is going to be like a zany conversation about, like, what if we could have a line linking Gaithersburg and Alexandria? That quickly evolves into a conversation about things like capital budgets and tunnel capacity. So Metro has a list of potential changed maps that they have been vetting, that they've gotten input on, that they released this week. And there's some pretty cool stuff. One of them has basically turning the Blue Line into a loop where there's another tunnel down between National Harbor and the bottom of Alexandria, the bottom of the Blue Line. And there's another version where the Silver Line turns into an express. And then after it crosses the Potomac, it goes through like Georgetown and West End and a bunch of neighborhoods in Northeast DC before meeting up with either the Green or the Orange Line. There's a lot of cool stuff out there. It's a kind of weird time to be doing it because the other story we hear about Metro is their tight day-to-day budgets.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. I mean, you've got a $750 million operating gap, but as you say, this is the capital budget, baby. We got to talk about this stuff because 20, 30, 40, maybe more, but when we're all in the ground, this stuff you got to consider. And, anybody who rides the Blue, Orange, Silver Line knows very well that those trains tend to bottleneck as soon as you get past Roslyn and you're heading through, the core of DC. And these are proposals to actually do something about it. I mean, I'd love to see it happen someday. You hop on the train out to Ivy City in a way that you can't right now, but I'm not holding my breath that I'm going to see it. But it's always fun to look at a new Metro map.
I like that you mentioned the one to Ivy City because that's my favorite of the projections. There's, I think, 6 or 7 different kind of maps that they've laid out as options with this new Roslyn tunnel. Well, some of them have a new Roslyn tunnel. Some of them just divert traffic in other ways. But I'm curious about which ones if you could pick one of these and they were going to make it tomorrow, which one would it be?
Frankly, I am not a great fan of National Harbor. So if I do not sound that enthusiastic about taking the Blue Line out there to, ride the Ferris wheel or whatever, then you'll forgive me. I mean, I'm kind of torn because, as you say, I do like any alignment that gets to Union Market and Ivy City, which are places that I actually go. And both the blue and some of the silver options get you there. I feel it's worth noting in all of this that they could actually start running express service if they were to choose some of the Silver Line alignments that they do, which is to say you wouldn't have to stop at every single stop as you head from DC out to the Northern Virginia suburbs, mirroring what New York is doing. And as someone who has family in the suburbs and friends and is quite tired of seeing every single downtown metro station on the way out, it would not hurt my feelings one bit.
Selfishly, I am exactly with you. Like, I do go to Ivy City or Union Market having those and Hyattsville and stuff put on the metro map seems really cool. On the other hand, I can imagine, like, look, a lot of people come to National Harbor for conventions. They land at National or Dulles, and having them be able to take care of that with Metro is probably like a boon for Metro and for the roads of the region to not have traffic on them. So I would use that less on a personal level, but I kind of get how that actually could like be a good thing. And I do think, like, I mean, I hate to even use these words, but the second Roslyn Tunnel, it is a common denominator of a lot of these. The idea is all these trains, they've got 3 different lines that go through from Foggy Bottom to Roslyn, and they get bottled up. So much of this, the ability to run like a grown transit system depends on having a new tunnel under there to take some of that pressure off. And in the process, they could use the second tunnel to connect to a new station in Georgetown or West End. I kind of get where that is, even if it doesn't look very sexy on a map because it kind of duplicates something that's already there. I see how important that is in this sort of fantasy land where they're able to do any of this.
I think that, as you say, at a certain point, it's not about you and me. It's about what Metro thinks will get the most riders, and crucially, where Metro thinks they can serve that will see the most development. I mean, that has always been part and parcel of Metro's decisions. It's sort of a mix between where is developed already and where has the potential to be developed more if it's served by transit. National Harbor has been clamoring for a Metro for quite a while. It is a development that is backed by a very prominent developer firm that, if I had to guess, will ultimately convince Metro to prick that option. I think Metro has even said it's the option that would generate the most new ridership. And I mean, come on, there's no way that we get through this thing without seeing a new Georgetown Metro station. That's another one that people have been arguing about for years. The Key Bridge Metro site has been reserved for a long time now. The old Exxon station you see as soon as you come off the Key Bridge as the stop for not only the Metro, but the gondola over to Roslyn. You can't forget that project. It's going to happen, even if it takes 100 years, considering the deep pockets of everyone involved in that particular project. So I fully expect to see that happen, even if it's in like 2100.
A Metro-sponsored gondola. I'll take it.
One other thing on National Landing, because ultimately Uncle Sam is always involved in Metro funding decisions, but there is a fairly significant chance that the current county executive of Prince George's County, where that is located, will be a member of the U.S. Senate by the time they are next having discussions about help for the Metro. And speaking of Maryland, our pal Jordan Pascal, a friend of CityCast, did a piece this week about the new bathrooms at BWI Airport, which are on a list of best bathrooms in America that you can vote on. Priyanka, I know that you always love weeks where you get to study bathrooms. Will you tell us what's going on over there?
Yeah, I've studied bathrooms a lot more on this job than I ever would have expected. I don't know why this keeps coming up, but there are 10 bathrooms that are up for best bathroom in America, and the bathrooms at BWI are one of the options. And it's interesting because when you look at these options, and we'll link to it in our show notes, they're pretty much all from bars or restaurants across the country. They're mostly aesthetic. Like, they just have really cool lighting. Or there's one in Greenville, South Carolina. It's a place called The Rabbit Hole, and it's an Alice in Wonderland themed bathroom where they play Alice in Wonderland over the speakers as an audiobook. There's ones that are super minimalist. There's ones that are super, super fancy looking. But the BWI bathrooms, I think, are the only ones on here that are here primarily for like utility reasons, which makes me inclined to want to vote for them for that reason. The stuff that makes the BWI bathrooms stand out is that they have like the toilets all have full length doors and they have a red or green light above them to show if they're occupied. There are like sensors that let custodians know if any of the supplies need to be refilled, so that you're not like, I cannot remember going into an airport bathroom and there actually being soap, like, ever. They also have like the urinals in the men's bathrooms are spaced out enough so that there's space for your rolling bag, because where to keep your luggage when you go to the bathroom at the airport is always such a struggle. So honestly, like, those reasons alone are enough for me to vote for BWI in this contest. All of the others, like I said, are mostly aesthetic. They're really beautiful, but that's just not as important to me in a bathroom. I don't know. What about y'all?
Although, look at the pictures that Jordan put up, they have some wild colors and use of lights, and you feel like you're in the bathroom of a like Miami Vice nightclub or something.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, they are stunning. And like they really run the gamut. There's one that's modeled after the Tokyo subway. Also, the other one on here that I did like a lot is the safety rest areas in parts of Jackson, Minnesota. So these are bathrooms off the highway. And they're also really beautiful. And I think that it's nice to make a rest area, which typically is known for being really disgusting and sticky and grimy, having that make this list is pretty cool, I think.
Well, that's the whole idea why the fact that BWI is even a part of the running here is similarly funny to me, because just as you say, whether it is a rest area or an airport bathroom, that is normally something that I associate like with a chapter of Dante's Inferno more than like a place that I want to be. So kudos to them for even making it on the list. I haven't been to BWI in a couple of years, and I don't remember the bathroom experience being particularly pleasant. So I don't know what they've done, but I very much support it. I say if you're doing it at an airport or a rest stop, you're working with a higher degree of difficulty than these other contenders that are in like restaurants or whatever. So kudos to them.
Absolutely. And if you are curious about bathroom content, you should check out an episode that we aired a while ago about the public bathroom situation in DC. The spoiler alert is that they are few and far between and they are gross and grimy. So we could learn something from BWI. But there's a push to make them better and there's a push to put out more of them. And so check out our episode to learn more about that.
It's true. It's actually like kind of my weird hobby horse that DC needs more public bathrooms, and that Robert White, among other people on the DC Council, is actually working to make happen. You could see 2 new ones downtown sometime if they ever manage to fund this legislation, which anybody who's ever had to buy an overpriced coffee just to use a bathroom knows is sorely needed here.
All right, well, when we do get those bathrooms, we will probably make them our tip of the day, but for the time being, we're going to have to do something else. It's Friday, so our tip of the week, we often get these from readers and guests. It is that we are about to get the August recess for Congress, and when Congress isn't in session, the giant parking lot in front of the Capitol is frequently empty. Tourists park there all the time, so chances are you don't get a ticket. Plus, the ones who work for Congress have different underground parking lot anyway.
It's a hot tip.
And that is all for today here on CityCast DC. Our lead producer is Priyanka Tilve. Our producer is Julia Karen. Our newsletter writer is Kayla Cote-Stemmerman. Our production assistant is Susanna Brown. And our hosts are Bridget Todd and me, Michael Schaefer from Politico. Music is by Alex Roldan. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend, rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our morning newsletter. We'll be back Monday morning with more news from around the city. Bye.